Coming up on the Pioneer Sideline, comeback for the ages. The women's soccer team rallies for a crucial and thrilling conference victory.
Upset-minded, the men's soccer team takes on the number 3 team in the nation. They take them to overtime. The highlights are next.
And overrated. Which all-time great athlete is the most overrated? We'll debate.
All that and so much more. So why wait? Let's come on down to the Pioneer Sideline. Hi, welcome to the Pioneer Sideline alongside Sarah Maculin. I'm Josh Krupp. We're coming off a thrilling weekend of soccer at home, and it was a weekend that the teams have had marked on their calendar since the season's beginning. Sarah, it was a phenomenal weekend.
It definitely was. The women's team hosted 2 of the best teams in the River States Conference as they fought to stay in the postseason hunt. The weekend started with a 2-0 victory over West Virginia Tech as Point Park handed the Golden Bears their first loss of the season.
Then the big test. Rio Grande came to town on Sunday for a date with the Pioneers. Let's get to the highlights. It was senior day for the Point Park women's soccer team hosting Rio Grande. Rio coming off a tough 2-1 conference loss against Carlo on Friday. 36th minute, this is Jenna Jones, lines up a free kick. She puts Rio up 1-0 early. She's also an all-conference pitcher on the second team last year. 2 minutes, or that was the halftime score. No, I'm sorry, 38th minute now. Peyton Davis gets a breakaway. Ashton Webb tries to play with her hands instead of her feet, and it's 2-0. That's the halftime score. And then we go to the second. A foul is called inside the box on Rio Grande. Point Park celebrates because it's PK time. Izzy Hunter. Who else? Leads the team in scoring. Boom. 6th of the season. Keeper kind of tripped up. Goes right down the middle. It is 2-1. Game not over yet. They only need one more to tie it. In the 60th minute, Elijah Pedamonte gets a pass in the far side to Morgan French. There it is. That's this one right here. That's Izzy Hunter taking the lead for Point Park. 3-2 victory for the Pioneers. Izzy Hunter gets the game winner. Morgan French gets the game tying goal. Rio Grande doesn't have an answer. The Pioneers come out with a thrilling win. They improve to 5-2-1 in conference play. And what a thrilling victory that was in comeback fashion.
Right, and Allison Schubert joins us now to break down the game. So what do these 2 big wins this weekend do for this team's momentum?
Well, their last 2 games didn't go so well. They had a tie, 1-1 against IU East, and then they lost to Ohio Christian. So this is a huge confidence booster for them. As we've said in plenty of shows past, the women's soccer team plays a very mental game, and momentum is huge for them. So they have Shawnee State tomorrow and Carlo on Saturday, and I think this is going to be a huge confidence booster for them going into those 2 games.
What are your thoughts on this Shawnee State game tomorrow? Non-conference test, a very important game against Carlo Saturday that could determine where we sit in the standings, but what about Shawnee State?
Well, Shawnee State is 8-5 overall, but in conference play they're only 1-4. That being said, they're in a very tough conference. They're in the Mid-South Conference. This game really means nothing to the Pioneers. Yeah. But I think it's going to be a very good game. Shawnee State played Ohio Christian University, Cincinnati Christian University, and Asbury, and they won all 3 of those games, all 3 of which the Pioneers lost to. So I think it's going to be a good game, good matchup. And then Carlo, they're 2-3-2 in the River States Conference. Personally, I think it's going to be a good game, but I think the Pioneers will come up on top on that one.
Carlo did pull off the upset. As we said at the beginning, they beat Rio Friday, so you can't write them off. It should surely be a good game, though.
Now, Izzy Hunter had that penalty kick in the last game, and she clearly is a crucial part of Point Park's offense. So what does she bring to the table, and how crucial is it that she continues this pace and is like a leader in the next games down the stretch?
Well, I think Izzy Hunter is a great role model for these younger girls that are playing now. She's first in goals, as you mentioned. She has 6, and she's actually second on the team in shots. She has 35, right behind Gabby Widman with 38. So I think she's a very aggressive player that a lot of the younger players can look up to, and she was just named the RSC Offensive Player of the Week this week. So I think that's very big for her, and it's good for the younger players to be able to look up to someone like that.
And she's one of the 7 seniors that they honored Sunday. What does this senior class mean to this Point Park team?
I think it's a very strong group of leaders. As a whole, they have 14 of the 34 goals that the team as a whole has this season. So I think they're a very strong group of girls, and I think they're going to be losing some talent next year when these girls leave.
Well, thank you so much, Allison. On to the men's side, a tough 3-2 loss for the Pioneers against West Virginia Tech on Saturday, Sarah.
Yes, Josh, and Alan Ramos scored 2 goals in the first 10 minutes, but West Virginia Tech countered with 3 unanswered goals.
So that was a tough loss to swallow. Sunday, the biggest challenge of the season. Rio Grande, once again, they were the 3rd-ranked team in the country. Coming to town, let's roll some more highlights, this time on the men's side. Number 3, Rio Grande, 11-1-1 overall on the season, 5-0-1 in conference play. National champs 2 years ago, runner-ups last year. Let's start off in the 26th minute. First half, Eduardo Zurita sets up Harry Riley, gets it over the head of Juan Zamoza. It's 1-0, and that was the only score in the first half. So Point Park very much in this game. 60th minute, Wessel Rietveld finds Alan Ramos. You said his name earlier. He ties the game here. It's his 13th of the year. Makes it 1-1. Hey, there's your own Wallstra, the head coach of the Pioneers, arms extended in the air in celebration. 5 minutes later, though, Jorge Guanavart, last year the men's player of the year, the men's athlete of the year in the conference, gets Rio on top. 25 yards out, that one was deflected. Under 10 to go, Mitchell Roll gets a good look. Oh, can't get it to go. That would have tied the game. But wait. Referee's going to gather. They say there was a handball on Rio Grande. PK time again. And look at this. Roberto Whitley ties the game up in the 81st minute. So the number 3 team in the country going to overtime for this, just the 2nd time this season. Last time was a draw against IU East. So in overtime, first few minutes, Alan Ramos inside the box, game on his head, and a great save from Rio Grande. So we go to the 107th minute. Great ball movement from Rio here, and it just goes between the legs of Juan Zamoza. Omar Walcott gets the game winner, and Rio Grande escapes narrowly with the victory.
Yeah, Josh, and Megan is in with us in studio for a couple to talk about this weekend. So they had some really bad losses this weekend. Close one loss to Rio Grande. So what does this do to the team's morale with one more regular season game left to go?
Well, first off, no one likes to lose, so morale's already going to be low, and you lost 2 in a row. Like you had said earlier, this has been marked on their calendars from the beginning of the season, but they need to shake it off. They're going to see Carlo this weekend, and Carlo's not that strong of a team, so I expect them to do well and win big. So you need to shake it off, go into Carlo, and finish out the season strong.
Exactly, and I was talking to some guys on the field afterwards, and they're like, listen, we gave them our all. They know what team we are. So, morale, of course, you're going to hang your head after a game like that, but they got to move on. Just move on to the Carlo game this weekend, Sarah.
Yeah, that's a huge game coming up for them. Now, Carlo is winless, so it should be an easy game for the men, but how important is it that they kind of push that fact to the aside and focus on really playing good soccer?
Right. I mean, you don't want to go into the game thinking this opponent's easy and just washing them off. That's not going to go well. But I do expect them to win big. They beat Carlo last year 6-0. I kind of expect the same thing. I think the offense is more high-powered this year than they were last year. So I expect a high-scoring game, a tight defense. I don't expect the goalie to see many shots this weekend.
Back to Rio Grande, number 3 in the country. You come to Pittsburgh. They beat Carlo on Friday night 11-0. And then they go to overtime with Point Park, a team that they've rivaled with in the past few years. What's a game like this do to them? First of all, they escaped. But second of all, they had to go to overtime, and they didn't really play a great game.
And like you had said, I mean, Point Park was up in that game as well, so it's not like Rio was leading the Pioneers either. So I think if I'm Rio Grande, I'm a little nervous. They were very well, they could have lost to Point Park. I know they turned it on the second half. Many of the shots were the game was more dominated in Point Park's zone at that time. But still, if you're Rio, you need to check yourself. You need to practice a little bit harder, not take these opponents so weakly.
Well, thanks, Megan. Coming up next, a rough weekend for the volleyball team on the road.
Yeah, a rough weekend that maybe they shouldn't have had, and how will it affect the rest of their season? Mike Turk will come in and join us, and later we have our last look at the cross-country teams before conferences, how the teams are shaping up. We'll be right back.
What would you do to create something that could survive 1,000 years? You'd start with a formula, head to the lab, and forge it with fire. Just imagine everything it could do. It could leak pollutants into the soil and water, or it could conserve energy, cut CO2 emissions, and reduce raw material. Recycling is more than cutting waste. Recycling is about the legacy you want to leave. Why on earth would you want to do anything else? Recycle. Don't throw away our chance at survival.
Good evening and welcome to Newsnight. I'm Josh Krupp alongside Jess Paterchak. Tonight we begin with
The mayor is continuing to deal with the challenges the city is facing.
But tomorrow we have just a little bit of cloudiness. We have
off throughout the day with some strong wind gusts. That's going to continue tomorrow. 20
Teams have already started talking to free agents. Saturday's partly cloudy, but 70 degrees? Where is the pool at? I mean, come on.
You might have already burned your bracket, ripped it up.
I am Royce Jones.
And I'm Casey Houlihan.
Thank you so much for joining us this evening. That's your news tonight for Jim.
UView Television is live here at the Center for Media Innovation with a very exclusive interview with Point Park's Black Diamond, our school mascot. We're taking questions on our social media at UView Television.
Our first question came in from @PointParkU Black Diamond. They want to know, what is one thing you love about Point Park?
UView.
I
feel
knew
that.
it.
UView's the best.
It is. All right, Alex, you want to read our next question?
Okay, we have another question from Point Park Cab. They're asking, when is the next time you're going to make a surprise appearance at their next event?
He's being coy. Looks like we're gonna have to show up.
Yeah,
to
I
the
guess
event
we'll have
find
to
out.
see.
All right, that's all we have for right now. But you can submit your own questions at UView Television, and we might read one of yours after the break.
The volleyball team hit a roadblock last weekend. Let's bring in Mike Turk now. Mike, the team hit the road but didn't come away with any wins. What can you tell us about their trip?
Well, yes, it's been a rough time to be a Point Park volleyball player recently. Last week, they dropped all 3 matches. They played Mount Vernon Nazarene in a non-conference matchup. Didn't even come away with a single set win on that one. The team was not happy about their play in that one. Non-conference match, okay, they got to warm up a little bit before a big weekend with IU Southeast and Brescia. Well, that warm-up match didn't help very much. They only picked up 1 set in both of those games. They dropped them both to IU Southeast and Brescia, who are River State's Conference West opponents. But luckily, Point Park picked up a little luck. IU East dropped a game this weekend. They dropped to Asbury. So Point Park still only trails by 1 game in the River States Conference East Division, which we all know the winner of the River States Conference East Division will host the conference tournament this season.
Mike, I want to ask you about a key player that is coming back, but you mentioned IU East, and we'll talk about that later. But what was it? How big is it for Point Park to see IU East go down also this weekend, so that way they don't run away with this Eastern Division with Point Park very much alive?
Well, it doesn't matter unless we beat them this coming weekend. They're coming here on Friday. They beat us the first time, 3-1 on their home court. It's definitely a game Point Park can win. I was there in Indiana for that game. Point Park played tough. Not their best. They were a little messy in serve receive, but it's definitely going to be a big test for them, and it's going to be the most important match of this season thus far.
Now, Ashley Taylor also maybe coming back. Fully healthy, question mark?
Well, Coach Bruno has not been playing her on defense that much, especially in the back row. He's had Savannah Dishman, who started the season off at middle, move to the back row, play a lot of back row. Now we've seen Destiny Tucker step up from the bench, the transfer from California University, Pennsylvania, and she's been playing a lot of middle. She can pop a ball with a swing when it hits the court. But Ashley Taylor, going back to what you asked, not 100% healthy so far. I'd say she's around the 85 to 90% range. I think it's going to be very important for her to really step it up this weekend and hopefully not overdo herself.
And finally, we want to ask about this coming weekend, right? So we have a big weekend. You mentioned IU East. What's on tap for the weekend this weekend for the Pioneers? Volley for Vision Saturday, too.
Well, IU East is on Friday, like I said. Going to be the biggest match of the year. 1 game behind them. Asbury 8-4, Point Park 7-5 in the conference. Now we're going to have to look up to see what exactly the tiebreaker rules are, But Point Park, it's going to be the best game of the weekend.
Well, thanks, Mike. Up next, the cross-country teams get their final tune-up before conferences, and who our analysts say is the most overrated athlete of all time. We'll be right back.
I shouldn't have to pay to walk down the street. Pay with my comfort, my freedom, my peace. Always on guard, on edge, off limits. Don't follow me, don't touch me, don't treat me like I'm yours. I don't need your whistles, your comments, your eyes. I already know I'm a prize. My confidence isn't for sale. Respect me, don't inspect me.
And when people ask us who can join UView, the answer really is anybody, and we mean anybody. Any major, any experience level. Some people, have a lot of experience coming out of high school, and others don't know how to really sit on a couch properly, and that's okay. We're here just to give you the chance to learn and have fun and prepare yourself for the real world. College, after all, it's all about trying new things.
Welcome back. The cross-country teams dominated last weekend at the Asbury University Invitational, coming away with individual and team wins.
On the men's side, it was Xavier Stevens winning the race by 14 seconds. And none other than Anna Shields set a course record by over a minute to take the women's crown.
Friend of the program, Kiera Fry joins us now to break down the race. And Kiera, is Anna Shields the conference favorite at this point?
I think so. I think it's safe to say that Anna Shields is definitely the favorite. At Asbury, she ran a great time and set the course record, actually.
So where do you put her? If you're Anna Shields, get into her head. We had her here a few weeks ago. Does she go into this race saying, I want to just qualify for nationals, or I want to win this race and just get into nationals and then focus on just dominating the field at nationals, which she has the chance to be Point Park's first All-American across country?
I feel like she should definitely look ahead and set high goals for herself, because I think that she's definitely capable of doing it. And I think that she should try her hardest and set high goals and go for those.
Now, who do you think on the men's side is going to come out on top, with both Xavier Stevens and Sean Hilverdine winning races?
I'm going to go with Xavier Stevens. He ran a great race at Asbury, and he beat everyone by 14 seconds, taking first place, which I thought was pretty impressive.
And you can't really go wrong with both, as Sean has really carried this team all year, and you have Stevens there right alongside him, and the two have really been impressing, and everyone on the men's team has really kind of stepped up this season. Now, we didn't see every team at this Asbury Invitational. Who else is out there that Point Park has to be concerned with, or should they just run their own race?
I think that Rio Grande could be a potential threat because they weren't at the Asbury Invitational, so they didn't get to see how Point Park matched up against them. But I still think that Point Park has a lot of potential and that they could still come out on top.
Now, Asbury is kind of a tricky course. So what kind of course is it, and how do you think it was good practice for them getting to run that before they run conferences this weekend?
At the same course, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It being the same course is definitely like a huge helping factor, especially since Rio Grande wasn't there to run it this past time. And it's definitely less of like flat terrain, so they got used to being able to run on like different levels and get their endurance levels up for that.
Well, thank you so much. We'll be keeping an eye on the cross-country teams in 2 weekends at conferences. Now, they're looking to go to nationals, and there's a lot of national news out there. And for all of those headlines, we head over to Taylor Spirito at the Sideline Sports Desk. We'll call it that. There's no desk, but let's send it over to Taylor. Hi, Taylor.
The Chicago Cubs have parted ways with pitching coach Chris Bosio on Sunday. Bosio has been with the Cubs for the past 6 seasons, in which he's seen a World Series win and one of his pitchers win the National League Cy Young Award in 2015 for being the best pitcher in the league. In 2016, Bosio's pitchers led the National League in ERA, getting bumped down to 4th place this past season. The Cubs are wasting no time finding his replacement, interviewing Jim Hickey for the job last Monday. Hickey and the Tampa Bay Rays mutually agreed to part ways after this season after 12 years together. some of which were spent working under current Cubs manager Joe Maddon. Other teams interested in Hickey include the St. Louis Cardinals and the San Francisco Giants. Speaking of the Cubs, they are out of the World Series final after winning it all last season. The elimination came at the hands of the Houston Astros after a Game 7 victory. Now the Astros are set to face the Los Angeles Dodgers for the title of 2017 World Series champion. Game 1 is scheduled for tonight in Los Angeles. From the ballpark to the basketball court, the NBA season is officially underway, and although it's only been a week, there have already been some injuries. Boston Celtics player Gordon Hayward is reportedly out for the season after fracturing his ankle during the first game of the season against the Cleveland Cavaliers. The 6'8" small forward is home from surgery and has been staying pretty positive, according to head coach Brad Stevens. In the meantime, the Celtics have had to make some roster changes with Hayward's absence, including giving some players opportunities that they wouldn't have had if Hayward was active. Also on injury watch is Cleveland Browns left tackle Joe Thomas. Thomas left Sunday's game against the Tennessee Titans during the third quarter with a triceps injury. The injury ends Thomas's snap streak of 10,363 in a row. Thomas has also played in every Browns game since he was drafted 3rd overall in 2007. Fans at the game and players from both teams paid respect to Thomas by giving him a standing ovation as he headed to the locker room and didn't return to the field. The Browns went on to lose in overtime, adding yet another loss to their 0-7 record, making them one of only 2 teams thus far with 0 wins under their belt.
Now, Taylor, injuries are pretty common nowadays in the NFL. How do you think Joe Thomas has managed to go this long, over 10,000 games, without having an injury?
The thing about Joe Thomas is really his mentality. Like you said, he's played with the Browns for the past 10 seasons, never missing a game. And to play for arguably the NFL's worst team really requires a lot of mental toughness. So I think it's all in his mentality and knowing that he's a really key part of that Browns team. And since he's not there anymore because of his injury, they're really going to struggle defensively. And that was really evident within the last quarter and overtime of that game.
Well, thank you so much, Taylor. Coming up next, I head down to the Sideline Courthouse for the case of the week.
Who is the most overrated athlete of all time? That's coming up next.
One is the loneliest number that you'll ever do. 2 can be as bad as 1. It's the loneliest number since the number 1.
Welcome back. We often rank athletes into 2 categories, overrated and underrated. This week we found out what superstars are the most overrated of all time. It's time for the case of the week. For that, we bring in Rob Gomez, Mike Turk, and Josh Krupp is with us, joining us on the debate this week. So guys, I know you all have been anticipating this all week and have all your notes ready to go. So we'll start off with Mike. So give me the person you're choosing as the most overrated and one quick explanation why.
Well, the ghost of Pap Turk might come back from the dead to haunt me this Halloween about saying this, but I'm going to say Terry Bradshaw, and because of poor statistics.
All right, Josh.
Okay, I'm going Derek Jeter. We think he's the best of all time in X, Y, and Z categories, but there are several others right there with a very mediocre player.
All right, and Rob, go ahead.
And I got good old Philip Rivers, mainly because he's played with probably over 5-6 Hall of Famers, 3 for sure, and has only got 4 wins under his belt in postseason.
All right, so we got a couple different,
A little bit long.
couple different picks, 2 football, 1 baseball. So Guys, go at it.
First of all, who is rating Philip Rivers that high? Every year they're like, oh, he's so overrated.
No. You can always hear on every sports talk that he is an elite quarterback. You hear it all everywhere.
Tomlinson and then
always. You can always hear arguments of Philip Rivers being some elite quarterback. And trust me, I know. My team is in the AFC West.
Of all time, there are several. If you look at any top 10
not even in
quarterback
that
list,
draft. With Eli Manning and Ben
Eli Manning's
Roethlisberger.
more overrated than Philip Rivers. You say elite, people say, oh, it's Eli Manning because elite Eli. He has more Super Bowl rings than Philip Rivers. I think Eli's more overrated than Philip Rivers, and if you have one quarterback in one generation who's more overrated than that quarterback, then he's not the most overrated of all time. Terry Bradshaw. Terry Bradshaw's got 4 rings. If he's not on those 70s teams, he's not on that team. Do they win 4 Super Bowls?
They had a Hall of Fame running back. What was his name? Franco Harris? Yeah, that's his name.
He sounds about right.
Immaculate reception. Yeah, Terry Bradshaw. Here we go.
Here we go. One play. They didn't even win the Super Bowl in that series.
And then we got also Terry Bradshaw's numbers are just horrendous. 70.9 QBR all time. There's so many quarterbacks above him, even a Steeler quarterback, and Neil O'Donnell had a better QBR than him.
So why I'm saying Derek Jeter is the most overrated athlete of all time is because when we think overrated, we think, okay, they're put on a pedestal. Derek Jeter seems to some as the greatest Yankee of all time, to some as the greatest shortstop of all time, and when you break down the numbers, he just simply isn't there. Well, and when you look at Terry Bradshaw, Bradshaw's not in anyone's top 10 quarterback list of all time. Neither is Philip Rivers, so they're not like overrated. You know, like Jeter, if you look at the top 5 shortstops of all time, Jeter's going to be up there. He was an ambassador for the game, and rightfully so. I love his character. But on the field, I have a whole sheet of stats here that says he is overrated.
So how much, you both brought up 2 players that have won World Series, Super Bowl. How much does that overshadow the poor statistics?
So this is the thing with Rivers, is Rivers has all these guys, and he's always compared as an elite quarterback with number of analysts that, oh, this guy, you know, he's always someone you got to watch out for because it's Philip Rivers and the Chargers. You never know. But in hindsight, it's not. Oh. With Jeter, okay, this guy had no more than 4 seasons less than batting under 270. All right, that was his rookie year. He batted 250, and then the last 3 years of his year. Everything else has been over 270.
He had a career. There's a wins above replacement stat. It's called WAR, and his career WAR is 72x, which is very good, 72 and change. You know who else had a 72 career WAR? Scott Rowland. You know what? 10 Yankees had a career WAR per season better than Jeter, and I'm not going to name them all. And then you look at the guys who have had more than 19 or 12,000 plate appearances, and he is 13th in slugging, 14th in OPS, 12th in homers, 13th in triples.
Before we get it, make it a debate.
How much do you value leadership though? Leadership in a clubhouse when it's come.
It goes for all 3 of these guys for leadership. If we're looking just on the field,
all right,
that's what we're looking at.
We're going to wrap things up here. Before we finish off, though, give me one more final point to argue each of your cases.
Well, Derek Jeter finished in 3 of the top 10 stats in MLB history, hits, at-bats, and runs. And Terry Bradshaw played behind one of the greatest defenses of all time, who averaged only 9 points per game one of those seasons, the 76 Super Bowl year, I believe it was. And he had 2 Hall of Fame receivers and a Hall of Fame running back to support him.
If Derek Jeter is one of the greatest all time, why did he never win an MVP? Why did they never see him as the greatest player that season, let alone as one of the greatest players of all time?
I'm going with keeping with my same argument. You know, Philip Rivers, they call him an elite quarterback. I do not believe he's an elite. That's why I think he is not. That's why I think he should be deserving of this, because he is not an elite quarterback, even though in my eyes.
Of all time, though, Rob.
Okay, I guess it's time for me to decide. It's kind of hard to choose because we're going between different sports. Mike and Josh, you both have very valid arguments, and I agree that Derek Jeter is overrated, but I think I'm going to give it to Mike just because of the fact that he had such strong parts around him that he wasn't the reason why they won 4 Super Bowls. So that's all we have time for this week, but sure to join us next week at the same Pioneer time.
The same Pioneer channel.
And the same Pioneer sideline.